Hi viewers, and today we're going to be looking at ToolManager. Now here's a screenshot of ToolManager and what it can do. So we've got our nice little toolbar down here, a la Mac style type toolbar, and Toolbar Manager can allow you to actually launch from menus, from icons. As we can see here, we can have multiple docks down the bottom, top, left, right, wherever you want, and it just makes that Amiga experience so much nicer. And ToolManager is obviously available for free from Amiga, and we're going to be installing 3 things in this tutorial. And one is the ToolManager bin, ToolManager extended libraries, and the actual dock brushes themselves as well. There's also an icon DT that I'm going to get into in a later date because it's going to be over a number of videos. Now the dock images or brushes can be found throughout the Aminet database. And these are the brushes that we can actually add to the dock to make our images of our icons look so much better. Rather than just having text, we can have these little icons on the bottom. We can search either via ToolManager brushes or dock brushes. There's plenty of them out there. There's Workbench versions, MUI versions. There's so many out there that we can choose from. So first thing we're going to do is type in ToolManager into here, ToolManager bin, and we're going to search for that LHA archive and just click and download it from here. We also need the extending libraries. These are just updated libraries to allow us to fix any bugs with actual ToolManager. They are totally optional, but it's worth installing those as well. So just do a search for those and just download that as well. Again, everything is an LHA file. It's like the other videos. We just download the LHA video files and copy them to the programs directory or our programs hard drive that we set up in UAE. So in the take these 3. So this dock brushes will I'll give you the link in the notes for that one. That's a set of dock brushes that someone supplied their own dock library that I use to start this just start getting started and getting those brushes in there. So FS-UAE hard drives and into our programs, and we've got some stuff still left over, so let's just get rid of that. At the moment I'm just using this as a dumping ground and not actually installing anything to it, and we just copy and paste those LHA directories in there. Now we jump into FS-UAE and just load up our Amiga. So we just hit start now with our A1200 and we're straight in, and I'm just going to get rid of this backdrop. So just right click, Workbench, backdrop, take that off, double click on programs, and we're going to install these 3 LHA files, and we're going to start with the dock brushes. Get those installed. As usual, you have to have LHA installed, which is on the previous videos. So LHA-X, and that will just extract, and we can go ahead and install the ToolManager bin now. Now we have to install this next. Don't install the extensions just yet. LHA-X on there, install that, and what we're going to have to do is wait for that one to finish before we actually install the ToolManager extensions. So that's finished now, because it's going to overwrite files. We don't want to install this first, so we just hit Y for overwrite on here. So that's definitely finished, and Y again. So as you can see, the libraries have been overwritten and a README has been overwritten. So that is all done for the actual extraction. And what we'll do is just go to update in here so we can actually see those files that have been extracted to our programs workbench. And we've got brushes and docks. So these are the brushes that have been extracted, and these are the brushes that we can actually add to our dock to make it a lot more nicer. Obviously, like I said before, there's a lot more brushes out there, and you can also make your own. So in ToolManager there's a brilliant README in there, a brilliant archive, a documentation, but we're just going to go ahead with the installation here using the intermediate and proceed with installation. and we're going to carry on with that one. I would install this one, but I'm not going to do for the moment. Install the additional packages, get rid of the disclaimer, and we'll start the toolbar manager and start the toolbar demonstration. Now we don't have to worry about this. Please insert volume 3.1. It's actually quite a pants demonstration. Doesn't actually show much. It just shows you the actual toolbar buttons themselves, which doesn't actually show toolbar in its entirety, ToolManager in its entirety. As you can see, just by clicking on these buttons, just opens some of the programs that are in there. It's not a very good demonstration, and it doesn't do it justice at all. So what we're going to do is just close these windows down, and if we look in our Workbench 3.1 in our preferences now, you'll see an additional icon, which is the ToolManager preferences. Just scroll over to the right. Here you go. We have the ToolManager preferences over to the right, and we'll just clean this window up. And we can snapshot this if we want to actually allow us to keep that in perspective how we've cleaned up. We have to snapshot these before. When you actually open up ToolManager preferences, you'll get this error message, so just cancel that, and we can actually start to configure ToolManager. Now we've got these individual tabs, and what I'm going to do is just reset the Amiga and just jump into the Amiga again. And what we'll do is start from a fresh reboot, and we'll start configuring ToolManager. And here you can see I've installed ToolManager. I actually configured it, and this is what we're looking for, something like this to start with, something very basic. So what I'm going to do is jump into ToolManager preferences. I've added the ToolManager preferences to that actual bar. And you can see that we've got a favorites progs with where programs in there, and a dock that I've set up with my favorite progs dock, and in here you can see a number of brushes and the actual executables themselves in there. So we're just gonna get rid of all this and actually set it up from scratch. So just hitting the delete button to delete those items in there, and just need to delete that, and we'll give that a test and save, and we should all be back to as we very first started. So to start this configuration process, double click on Workbench, double click on Prefs, and you can see that when I last cleaned up I did a snapshot. So we just clean up, and also we're going to go up to snapshot and go to all. So that's snapshot those icons in place there. So double click on ToolManager, and we've got our tabs with all nice and clear and ready to start. So ToolManager, we need to actually get some items in there, and we're going to actually start by creating a new group, and I'm going to call this my favorite programs, my fave progs. There we go, and hit use. Now because it's a MUI program, we can actually drag and drop into this. We haven't got anything in my favorite progs at the moment, and we can either drag and drop or do a new object in there. So we're going to get some programs in just by drag and dropping. So the first thing I'm going to put in is a toolbar manager preference, and you can see it's set it all up for us. So we're going to actually hit use on that, so we don't have to worry about any setting up. So I'm going to drag some more in here. So I'm going to put Picasso 96 screen mode in there, hit use. I'm going to stick, what else do I put in here? I'm going to stick the screen mode in there as well. Hit use on that. And I'm going to close this down and see what else we got. Actually, just move it out of the way. Utilities, no. Let's have a look at tools. No, let's just stick something in here. 1 minute. It's trouble when starting a new workbench. We don't know what to put in here. So let's stick clock. Let's stick the clock in here because we're going to use that all the time. Perhaps not. Yeah. Okay. So that'll do us for now. Stick multi-view in there as well. There we go. Use that. So we've got some programs in there. And at the moment, nothing will happen if we hit test because we need to set up a doc item. So click on doc tab, new group, and give this a name. Doesn't matter what we call it. But each time we create a doc in here, this will be a new doc. So we can have multiple docs in here. So I'm going to call this my favorite progs doc. So use that. So that's all good. And we're going to stick a new object in that. Now, again, because it's MUI, we're allowed to drag and drop. I'm just going to rename this object my favorite progs. And I'm going to drag and drop items into this. And we're going to drag them into the Exec column. So we just move this over to the side. And we'll click on Exec. Let's just give ourselves some space here. Let's move this up. Okay, so now we can actually drag and drop these objects into the Exec column. So we can just place them into here. So we can put a ToolManager in there, Picasso, screen mode, clock, and the multi-view. Not worried about images at the moment. And we're just going to take that off because we're just looking at the actual buttons themselves. We can add images later. Make sure the text is selected and then hit use. If we don't select text, then we won't be able to see them. And we'll hit test and you can see they've popped up on the left hand side. So that's good. That's our first doc done. Now jump back to the doc and we're going to alter some preferences in here. And the first thing we're going to do is, let's bring this down here a bit, is I'm going to make sure we've got this activated that's on. I'm going to click backdrop, and what this does is it actually connects it to the backdrop of the actual screen itself. We've got other things in here like centered and pop up, but we're going to look at backdrop first. So hit backdrop. And what that does, if we test it, it doesn't look like it's done anything at the moment. But if we look in our Workbench drop down, I've actually got the MUI drop down selected there. Let's move that. So click on the Workbench and click on backdrop. You can see we've now got a backdrop on. The actual ToolManager doesn't appear on here. You can still see it on the background here. So let's just jump into my ToolManager preferences. And that is because we've still got it open on our backdrop. So let's just take our backdrop off. There, as we can actually see, our ToolManager preferences is sitting there, still open. Let's close this down. So what we'll do is, I don't know why I did that. Sorry, 1 minute. Let's cancel out that. So if you hit ToolManager preferences, see, you can actually see that pops up without the error. If you hit ToolManager preferences on that again, it wouldn't. You can see the other items on there are actually working as well, absolutely fine. So our doc is working absolutely perfectly. Let's go back to our doc and do some additional configuration in here. Now if we double click on the actual doc itself, we can actually rename it, which we don't want to do. We actually want to drill down the level and double click on my favorite progs. And let's position this. So if we click on mouse, and if we hold and drag, we can actually drag this into position. Click OK and use and test. You can see where we dragged the mouse down, we've actually dragged that into position nicely. But you must actually click, and drag, click, hold and drag for that to work. Let's show you that again. So click on mouse and drag, so I'm going to drag it over to the left hand side, hit OK. Must release once we get into position. There we go, so that's all in position now. So we double click on my favorite programs, click on the end of the position, click on mouse, and then dragged. I'm going to drag to the far right, release, and OK, and test. And you can see it's got bottom right hand corner, and that's sitting there nicely. Let's increase the columns to something like, let's go to the full amount, 20, and what I actually do is span it across the screen. There we go, so that's spanned across the screen nicely now. And what we'll do is go back into our dock. Bear with me, mouse pointer was being a bit lazy there. And what we'll do is try and I'll show you the wrapping of this as well. So if I start this to something like 4, we've got 5 items in there. This will wrap the actual items, so you can see it's wrapped onto a new line. And I'm going to just adjust this to the correct amount of items that are in there, which are 5. And the positioning, I'm going to place it in the middle, roughly in the middle. Click use and test that, and that's actually positioned it actually off middle, but we can actually, there's a little trick to actually get these positioned, and I'll show you that in a minute. So if I jump into the preferences again, and if we try borders, what that will do is actually put a window around, actually open up the ToolManager in a window, and we can actually position this into the correct position. And then what I like to do then is double click on the actual dock bar, and then let's just position this. See, if we position this, the actual position doesn't actually change. So we position this correctly, click on the actual position, click and hold on the mouse, and what I'm going to do is click and hold and drag down to that corner, that bottom left hand corner, click OK, and we can then take the border off, click use, click test, and there we go. Remember that you need to click save to actually make these the actual configuration stick. But that's the easy way of actually allowing that to actually position. We can define hotkeys. So I'm going to define this to the Alt and T. Actually, right Alt and T, because Alt and T is actually a shortcut in UAE, which will override this. So Alt and T will allow us to actually open up the actual toolbar, and we can take the active off as well. And what that will do, if we test that, you'll see it's no longer active, but hitting right Alt and T, we can actually toggle that on and off. So just hitting right Alt and T will actually bring that up and hide it. So I'll double click on here again, and we'll look at the centered, which will allow us to actually center this. Make sure pop-up is on as well. You can actually see the position has been grayed out as well. So we hit use, test that. So where our mouse pointer is, if we hit right Alt and T on there, it will actually pop up wherever our mouse pointer is, centered around that. Let's go back into our preferences, and I'm going to take the pop-up off, and I'm going to take the centered off, and I'm going to remove the actual hotkey because I want this visible all the time, and click activated, use and test, and that's just place it back to where it was. So I'm going to hit save to make those settings stick. So there's our ToolManager all nicely centered. Now I'm going to have a look at adding icons to these, so we get a nice looking dock down the bottom, and we use that by using the image section here. So we've got to get some images in there. Now images are brushes, and there's other tool types that we can actually import to actually allow us to use different file formats, but the default is brushes. So we'll double click on our brushes, and what I'm going to do is drag brushes into the image tab. Now I'm going to find the brushes for those individual executables, so I'm just going to give myself some space. So we've got ToolManager, Picasso, Screen Mode, Clock and Multimedia. I may have to improvise here because I haven't got all of these. So let's have a look, see what we got. So I'm going to just go show by name, view by name, and we can drag and drop these into our images tab. So let's have a look. So the first one I'm going to drag in there is a time brush for our clock, and we're going to just, because it's the first one, we'll just create a group in here. It automatically asks us to create a group. I'm going to call it my favorite progs again. Hit use. That's in there. So that's the time brush in there. And the next one I'm going to drop in there is going to be the, as I said, the Picasso one. I'm going to have to improvise. Let's see what we've got in here. Got a screen mode one there, which I want to use. So let's click on images. And I've just fast forwarded here to actually where I've put in all the images for all the brushes that I want. I'm just going to use the overscan brush here for the actual Picasso one. Just drag and drop it in here. Hit use. So that's all the brushes in there. And now we need to actually put these onto our ToolManager and associate them with our images. So go back to our dock. Click on my favorite progs. You can see this image section here. Now sometimes this can be a bit tricky because the drag and drop is actually a bit interesting of how this works. Let's come out of this a second. Then we'll actually go in here. So we can see all our executables are in here, but we don't actually associate this with the image via this window itself by double clicking on it. We have to actually drag the image into here. Do that by clicking on the image tabs. So the first one I'm going to do is ToolManager. I'm going to drag that and make sure the dotted line is above, not below, because otherwise we're going to have problems. It will actually associate with the bottom one, and we're going to have to actually delete the brush from there or drag it back over the top. So I'm going to drag the overscan onto here as well for Picasso. Now I'm going to drag something, the incorrect one here for screen mode. I'm going to show you how to modify that later. Just going to do the same for this one, and we'll stick the correct one for the actual multi-view on top of there. So if I actually use this now, we'll see we'll have some incorrect images. Make sure the image one is ticked, the image box is ticked. We'll test that, and we can see that's not actually working. So we have to actually hit use and then test. And we can see our images are on there, but we've got some problems. We've got two ToolManager icons, and we've got the screen mode in the wrong position, and we've got a bit of a mess. So we're going to show you how to sort this out. Do not change them here. This is the wrong place to change them. Otherwise we'll end up in the right old state. So click on dock. Double click on my favorite progs. And what we're going to do is we're going to first click on the actual line itself. As you can see, it highlights the whole line. So we can't actually change the file here. We would have to actually delete it from here and actually re-add it. So that's one way of doing it. So we're going to actually do that with this image. So as you can see, you can't actually drag this image out. So just delete that and add it back in. So we'll go over to our ToolManager preferences, click on executables, and I'm going to just drag that screen mode back in. Click on images and collect the right image from here. So screen mode brush, make sure it's above, and that will drop it in there. You can actually also drag the image from here just directly over the item to change it like that, so you don't have to delete if you so desire. So that's all done. So if we hit use and test, we've actually got the right images in here now. So that's all good. So let's go back to our doc preferences, and we don't need the text anymore, so we can actually take that off. Hit test. So we can see the images are now without text, except for the text that's inside the icons. So that's it for now. Please join me in the next video where we'll go into this further. If you like this video or any other videos on my channel, please pop over to my Ko-Fi site, or Coffee, however you want to pronounce it. And there you can actually support me by dropping me a few pounds, a few francs or dollars, whatever your currency is. All money will be churned back into the show, not just for buying me a coffee. And I'll be buying resources and equipment to actually produce and enhance my current videos on that site itself.